And then I went in that afternoon. After hours, because I didn't want to make everybody sick. And
Very nice of you.
well, thank God I wore a mask when I met with Dave and Matt. Because I was sick Thursday. I mean, definitely ill. Wednesday, I got home and his parents took me out. I woke up at 5 and I'm like, oh, God. It came on my heart.
Even if it was 70. But he still needs to start.
Well, I don't know. It's. He's missing his mask. Maybe once. Yeah. Close. So I figured that. Like the whole crew, it's it's walking.
Oh, with read.
No, there's.
Yeah. That's.
It probably was bacterial. And I've had fumbles. And fumbles that really. And every time you get. That's sends you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good analogy. And it, it's.
Yeah.
I started out with just an upper respiratory infection. So, and then things all. You probably tell. I will. But there's. But it turns out. It was so big.
All right, it is 5 o'clock. If you've got the Zoom up and running, do we? Okay. And let's do roll call and get this works, this meeting going, this special meeting going.
Mayor Becker,
Here.
trustee Newton,
Here.
trustee Smith, trustee Markle, trustee Weber, trustee Valentine,
Here.
trustee Stover.
Here.
All right, we have a part and we can continue. All right, budget discussion number 5. Ms. Jones, have at it.
I would like to take a very quick moment and revisit the trustees that are on the public safety committee that are had a chance to tell the board their thoughts and feelings about the budget and find out so that I know where we need to go with that. So the vacancies and Stelter could need have that quick discussion for me, that'd be.
You're fine, I just have to.
Yeah, Mr. Person.
Apologies, I do need to interject for one moment though. As discussed at the previous meetings, so that action can be taken at these meetings, it is listed as a special meeting. So I need an approval of the agenda, and if we're going to discuss the police department part, we may need a modification as well.
Thank you. And so can we get, yes.
I'm trying to join the Zoom meeting and it says that
I
the
know.
meeting was scheduled for 9/8/22.
Right, it's not coming up right.
It's not allowing you to join it?
It was scheduled for 9/8/2022.
Okay, just one moment, we'll fix that.
All right, so can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
someone like to make an amendment to include the PD or the public safety?
Briefly start.
All right, got a second by that.
Second.
Discussion? Discussion. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, now we have a motion to accept the agenda with the addition of the PD. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right, public safety. Did you want to say anything? Then you're giving it to.
Yeah, there's only 3 points.
Go for it.
The 2 of us have met several times about the budget. There's 3 things I want to make sure, and it's clear to the trustees. One of those is that admin vehicles we discussed for training and stuff. We'd like to put this back this year. So that was budgeted for 90, but it's only going to take like 65 to 70,000. So that's what we're talking. Number 2, we approved Lexipol. So that was the software we talked about. And that's going to be included this year. Third recommendation is that we like the salary increases. We talked quite a bit at the this was just, it was not a special meeting, it was a budget work session. We talked quite a bit about the problems with officers leaving and that this being the lowest paid. And what we wanted to recommend is that salary adjustments are effective in November rather than waiting this year. So all those can be included in this year's budget because of the excess in there. But it would require budget adjustments. And those are the 3 things we wanted. Making sure people are clear about it. The admin vehicle flexible and moving salary adjustments, not waiting to June.
Now, my understanding is that the adjustment, if we have to do it through a formal adjustment, then we have to take it to the state and all of that versus just doing it with the excess.
Within the budget.
Yeah, within the budget, yeah. All right,
Is that process long?
The state one?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, then I would like to. I don't know if a motion's appropriate, but this is the time that we do it. So in order that we can get it done before the end of the fiscal year, December 31st. That's imperative because we do have a surplus in the public safety budget. And I'd like to roll that into these things rather than charge it out from next year.
So what you could do is make a motion to approve those expenditures.
I make a motion that we,
Yes, Cindy? No? Okay, go ahead.
I make a motion that we approve these, tentatively approve these measures and send it on to the state.
Oh,
No,
no, if you make a motion that we make these expenditures for this year, then we don't have to send it.
okay, I misunderstood. I make a motion that we approve these expenditures with the excess in the budget for the public safety and that we do it as of now.
Okay. Is there a second? All right, discussion from the board. Yes, Tom.
I question the necessity of the additional vehicle. I know that we talked about it twice, and I understand the arguments for it. I feel that an existing vehicle that's better maintained or something that is less expensive, something that's maybe older would be more appropriate and could save us some funds and still serve.
Okay, thank you. Paige?
I also agree with Thomas. I have a really hard time with the spending $65,000 on a pretty Cadillac vehicle, even though it's not a Cadillac. But I feel like that is a lot of money to spend, and I'd like to see some more shopping, something not expensive. And as part of our budgeting here today, it would be really helpful if we had that vehicle list that was part of resolution 2020. For the resolution for all of us to see facilities, and one of the other parts of the resolution was a complete list of vehicles and equipment. So I feel at a very huge disadvantage right now because I don't know what vehicles we actually have, what their ages are, what the mileage is. So I don't know how in dire straits we are, and I don't know if anyone else has that kind of information either.
Well, one of the things is we replace the vehicles one at a time rather than at fleet-wide. The problem is the last bunch of vehicles were bought pretty much all at the same time, and they're all aging out now. We have the money that was budgeted. We saved the money by not fully staffing the police department for the year. And this is an opportunity for us to use those funds to replace one vehicle, the unmarked or the administrative vehicle that we have now, the transmission shot. And it is not truly set up to be an administrative vehicle. It doesn't have the radios. It's got some problems. It's basically aged out. It needs to be replaced. And that's the logic for that. And if you've done any shopping for any vehicles, especially a four-wheel drive pickup type vehicle, we cannot do much better. New vehicles run in the range of $80,000. You pay there, you have to give them 30% down. And then it's a year before we get delivery. So that's a big chunk of cash and not having the vehicle for a year. We could maybe limp along, spend $7,000 or $8,000 on the one we have now, but it's still inadequate. It's not really built to be an admin vehicle, a police vehicle. It doesn't have safety items like a lock for the shotgun in there. It's just sitting up against the seat in the back. And that's not really hot for a lot of reasons. It's not safe to bring it onto a crime scene. And we do need new vehicles. And I would like to buy one vehicle per year or one vehicle every other year rather than 3 or 4 at a time when we're talking $150,000, $200,000. And we do need an admin vehicle. Otherwise, we have difficulties with the regulations that our officers have to be in full uniform and armed. And that's not appropriate. We have some liability issues if they're in Colorado Springs and they're armed, and they're come up on an incident, what happens? They're not supposed to react to what they're doing. You know, but they're armed and in the ship already, so.
Thank you, Mr. Stelter. Yeah.
A couple of things, one, if you could go less expensive, Matt, the one that we had budgeted for was for it to be a hybrid. So that you could do electric and gas, because the gas prices, who knows? If you would like, you can direct staff to do a fuel only vehicle, which would save a significant amount of money. So that needs to be discussed. And second, we just need, look into a vehicle. Once we find the vehicle, it's going to come back to the board for approval. So, this isn't about the amount of money yet. We're gonna budget high, at 75,000, but that's not necessarily what's gonna get spent. But if you want to save, you agree that there's a vehicle, and the list of PD vehicles are up on the screen for you. We have an 02, an 07, an 08, 2 11s, 116, 117, 2 18, 119, and 120. Sorry.
Okay. Everyone else here.
But this is about whether to
Spend the money on a vehicle or not,
not how much. We're gonna budget high, and I just need to know what that you want a vehicle included in the budget.
Okay. Yes.
One question for Corinne.
Yes,
How many police vehicles do we have now?
4 and the unmarked,
And the dead addict?
yes.
Okay, so we will be selling those as we phase them out, like the dead admin. We can sell it for.
And 5, I apologize because I'm forgetting the crown.
So
Ford is the one that the current admin is an 02. It has been mouse infested. It was demoused, detailed, and still driven for the last 3 years. It's over 100. It's got to be pushing 150,000 miles. The 07 is a trailer. That's the trailer. Thank you. Then hope that 08 doesn't belong to the PD anymore. I got transferred. The 11, the 2011s. One is the Ford Explorer that we got from Delta County, so it had a lot of miles on it already. And then the Crown Vic came from
Donation from the front range.
Front Range. Those were both high miles just when we got them. And so the newer vehicles that are patrol vehicles, those are 16 to 20.
Okay, thank you. John, do you have anything you wanted to add?
No.
Dave? Okay, we have, yes. No.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that everything we just said was said at the previous meetings. So I want to reiterate that I already understand all of that. And I accept that we are not setting a price right now, but being realistic, whenever we vote for stuff like this, whenever the board votes for stuff like this, it comes back and it gets purchased. realistically.
All right.
So what we're doing right now is establishing what we're gonna buy, basically. And if we're gonna spend $60,000 or more, I would assume that we could get gun lockers and a new transmission for a lot less than that.
And we still.
All right, let's, wait to be
Thank you.
recognized by the chair.
So I think that we could probably convert one of our cars into a hybrid for that price. Beyond that, what's in order is a vehicle purchasing policy. Because we did this with the trash truck 3 years ago or so. Because it was so expensive to like $250,000 for that vehicle, as I recall. It was, fund was put aside and money was saved up, so that when it did come time to buy the truck, the money was there. The existing truck was basically planned to be disposed of. And I think that it would be appropriate to establish a policy of when we replace vehicles. If it's gonna be 10 years, make it 10 years, it's gonna be 200,000 miles or whatever. But rather than taking each thing as a one-off and saying, well, we want a vehicle now, and you gotta do it this year, it makes a lot more sense to me for successive years and successive vehicles to have a policy in place so we can point to it and say, this vehicle is gonna lose 30% of its value in the next 5 years, we need to get to dispose of it now. Or something.
Thank you.
Um,
We got one.
that's everything I had to say. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah.
I would have choked on 90,000 to be honest, but cutting the hybrid out is probably smart. Hybrids also have an additional expense after anywhere from 7 to 10 years per battery pack, and it's way expensive. So you might know.
I do know, and you know what? My car is 12 years old. My batteries are in A1 shape. I have a friend who has one of the first Priuses ever put out. He has got, I don't know how many miles on it. Never a bike battery. So that is a myth.
Well, actually, it's not, but
I've got one person who had a
Yeah.
battery.
I have a neighbor and I want to replace his, it's $10,000. So anyways, I won't choke on, if you can bring it on a gas vehicle or diesel and keep it, in $50,000 to $75,000.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
I just have a follow-up question. Given the status of used vehicles, is it possible to get an all-gas comparable vehicle right now? And about $10,000 cheaper? Is that cheap, much difference? Is it, I don't know.
I would say that's probably realistic.
So then we'd be looking at about 55? Plus the add-ons?
This particular.
Okay.
Yes. Mr.
I
Penn.
just wanted to add, if you were listening to our chief last time, he was talking about the use of the police vehicle, often sits hybrid. Whereas the air was. I really like this, the value in the police. That's not our job. Our job is to approve the budget. Wise decision. He will be judged by the supervisor about whether he's making those decisions. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Yes. Mr.
And I'd like to see basically a profit loss statement where we analyze the cost of fuel versus the cost of the extra cost of the purchase price and then maintenance. And as far as getting a policy to replace vehicles, I'd like to set a maintenance level when we start. We put a percentage of what the value of the vehicle is, and then we decide that it's time to replace this one because it's costing us 15% of its value to fix it now, and we know there's more coming down the line. And that's a very good way to do it. Mileage doesn't work very well because we're such a small community. Our police cars don't go very far, but they idle many, many hours. And I don't know if we can put hour meters on them, but that might be another way to go. But we need to start thinking about replacing the garbage truck and funding the replacement of the garbage truck. So that's all I
All
have.
right. Anything from the public? Christine, we have, okay, all right. So we have a motion and a second to increase salaries and to purchase a vehicle in this year's budget. All in favor? Opposed?
Nay.
All right, that motion passes. All right, so then let's move on now to water and sewer. Yes, Mr. Markle?
I have an additional motion, before we move on. I move that we schedule, a vehicle purchasing policy, before the end of the year.
You want me
As
on?
an agenda item.
Okay,
Sorry.
do I have a second on that?
Allison.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, now let's move on to water, sewer and trash.
Yes, I'd like to move on to water, sewer and trash now. Let's do water. And I'd like to turn it over to David Weber to start the discussion, please.
Page 19. Okay, I just want to talk over this spreadsheet a little bit because I saw we were a little bit confused at the previous budget line. You could actually just ignore these two columns. And the only ones that are actually important are what did we think it was going to be for the 2022 budget? What is it really going to be? And there is a bit of prediction in here, which is what this magic number is, because the year isn't over. But we're 3/4 of the way through the year, so we have a pretty good idea on these numbers. And then what are we going to budget for the future for 2023? But one thing I wanted to show here, yes, is this magic number. You'll notice that our budget was for 270,000, but we had a water study done that predicted that our water charges usage would actually be around $700,000. That was off by 44%. Our actual is like 241. So this predictive model would have, we'd gone by and spent that kind of money, we'd be toast. When I saw this number, I went ahead and took the old spreadsheet that I had, Lotus 1231, and ran it. It's got a 20-year-old database. It's actually real water usage database that the town, real consumption was done 20 years ago. And it was also measured high by 20%, not 44% of this. But just a second. The 20% was probably due to the fact that we've been dramatically increasing water and sewer rates. And as a consequence, people started using less water. And you can see that physically in town by how dry some of the places have gotten. I actually think the model that I have, if it was converted to Excel and use current usage data, it's pretty good at predicting that. If you just back up a little bit, I want to see the water charges base rate. Okay. You'll notice that most of the money is going to be coming in with water charges base rate and not usage. Base rate is done because it's easy to calculate. You take the number of taps and multiply it, you know, whether they're in a town, out of town, commercial, residential, you get a magic number. So everybody wants to use this just because it's simple. Unfortunately, this rate is not fair. And it's not fair because it hits the poorest people the hardest. And it's been the policy 20 years ago, is town water to actually have kind of a minimum rate for people that are on fixed incomes, and then use the water charges to make up the bulk of the money. But in this case, what we're looking at is about $800,000 on the base rate, only $241,000 off water. They should be equivalent. They shouldn't be this great a discrepancy. So if we can predict this effectively, I'd like to see us move towards using more income from water charges and not from base rate. And I think we have the predictive tools to do that. Yeah.
Just a second. We had a rural water system coming out to us about this very.
Right.
They said, I'm just trying to learn about philosophy. The idea was that the water charges base rate paid for your capital improvements. You're very vulnerable if you're trying to bring a lot of income in by usage, because when that happens and the charges are big for usage, you're vulnerable because all people have to do is cut their usage and revenues.
And then you just raise your base rate. It can be done. You can do it just like that. So if you see you're not going to make it right by the end of the year, you just start changing the book. They were the ones that did this modeling, is that correct, Cindy?
Yeah.
It's totally bogus. So I wouldn't necessarily use that as a reference. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is that on water charges usage, we're looking at a 241,000, but for 2023, we're looking at 310,000. So Cindy, you're looking at a 70K increase in that. Are you predicting the fact that we'll be using the higher rates for next year? How did you get the 70K different number?
I for history, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let's bounce back and forth. It will make it much more efficient.
The history has shown that when we uprate, usage goes down, but then it slowly comes back up. And with the drought, I think that people aren't gonna let their lawns die forever, so the usage will come back up. But, and that might be a little high still. And I'm running my time to predict those numbers, and I have a database to figure out where we went wrong. I just wasn't able to do it today.
Considering the level of work that we have to do in water and sewer, there's no doubt we're gonna have to do something with the rates. It hurts me to say that, but that's the honest truth. And we need a reliable water and sewer system. All life in this town, and all your dreams are totally dependent on water. Whatever you guys want to do on council. So can we move over to the expenditures, please?
I add one more point, turn on water. One thing is an unintended consequence of raising the rates on the water usage is we have a lot of dead trees in town on the right of way. And it breaks my heart to see that happen because people just are not watering because they can't afford the usage. So that's where I kind of go, we should go to the tap and not the usage.
Trees are mainly fed off ditch water, and in my yard, the water table is at 17 feet.
Yeah, there's a lot of trees here.
Yeah, I know, I haven't seen that. I was wondering whether, you know how we had that October freeze? That killed a lot of trees. Rick, what you got?
Most of the trees that are dying right now are silver maples, and a silver maple has about a 70-year lifespan, and being confined is even shorter. Having the roots underneath the curbs and gutters, sidewalks, that's where we're having them die off. See, they're at the end of their normal senescence, is what we're seeing. They're planted pretty much all at the same
I
time.
wish I could agree if it was just the silver maples, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's a chronic problem because people that I know have ditch water are ignoring the right of way strips, grass and trees and everything else, even with ditch water. So what I'm thinking is we need to do a little bit more education about water use in the right of ways and who's responsible and who's not. That's an aside, but I don't want to see our town with just a bunch of dried up weeds in the right of way and dead trees. Is what it's looking like now. So that's just my point on unintended consequences.
You know, that's one of the problems with pipe in the ditch, and that's been a concern, is if we pipe the sewer, which leaks totally under town, we would end up killing a bunch of trees. So on expenditure, most of this is pretty, I've been through it, looks pretty good. Down here, we have contract services, that's and it's contract services. We're looking at a drop in contract services from 85 to 18K. Is that because we're bringing stuff in-house, Cindy?
Is the ORC, and the 68 includes the SSG, that 68,000 includes the SSG contract. The 18,000 is the ORC.
Okay, got it. So that 68K, was this pass through from a grant for doing work then? Or-
No, that was not grant funded.
Okay, can we scroll down a little bit more, please? So on this, we approved this already, this number. And this money we had left over, and we are going to be doing PRB work. We also should put plus 1 million gallon tank in the treatment. That was all approved on the same lines.
Okay.
So just add 1 million gallon tank rehab and 1 million gallon treatment area. And so that's our man, this will be the money to bring the 1 million gallon tank back online in the treatment. That's absolutely critical. We've had some good rain right now and we really needed it because we had stopped spilling water. Except on the lower treatment, which you can't use, we're spilling 160 gallons per minute down German Creek. It's not going into our system. By using this money, we'll be able to bring it in. Okay, one other thing on this, altitude valve, we pulled the plug on this. Okay, so that money can be recaptured.
But it was not spent and we don't have it to spend because of the change.
Yeah.
It's just not being carried over.
That's. Okay, one other thing I noticed on water expenditures, there's no payroll. Is there? Okay, I got it. Yeah, that's what it was.
That's the current payroll. And
Yeah.
then the additional person and additional payroll is this line
Right here.
right here.
2+ increases.
About, it would increase 507,000 for the new position and the increases that are included, have been included in to include the new positions. Town administrator is actually in the top number. This is the additional added person to run the plants and the increases in payroll.
And that's on line 6050. There it is. Most of the bottom page. Okay, that's what I appreciate. Line item 6050. Just above appreciation date.
This is correct payroll on 1372. And then the added position and added payroll is gonna be on 1696.
You don't have the line number, you have the account. 6050 is the account.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But 6050, isn't that what that is? So people can find it. Is
Yeah.
that what it is? Yeah. Well, I just didn't know if people understood where you were saying 107,483 is an estimate for another position and raises.
Yes. 6050, what's the next?
2+.
Okay, Dave.
And Mayor, I was curious to hear from finance and the administrator, did the allocation stay the same last year, how we allocated admin salaries?
No, I moved,
Go ahead, Cindy.
I moved, as much as I could to, admin staff to add, the general fund and moved it away from water and sewer.
We're choking on water and sewer. Yeah, I'll get to that later when we talk about the audit. So down at the summary. So in a water income, the increase here, this is due to that 360 whatever, 347K, grant that we're using for the PRB. That's why this number is different. And it's also the extra 70K in charge. Okay. So that's why those numbers, why this jumps up. Water income. And down a little bit farther, where we look at the, yeah. So we're going to end up having a drop in our reserves. And I think it's justified because the level of repair we have to do. So having functional water is much more important.
Could you just, I had a hard time following you on my paper on the screen. Could you, when you say a drop in reserves, could you give the number you're referring to? The actual value? So I can
Okay.
make sure I'm
One
on
million, $79,266 and change.
639.
885,858. Remember, this is a budget reserve, this is actual. We don't have that yet, do
So, those are, where we are reserved. This is an estimate of where our reserves should be. We are looking at, we're looking at a loss at this moment with what's in the budget of 213,000. We need to rectify that, where we're gonna get that.
And this loss is also including the 25% reserve and all the rest of that. It isn't. So actually, this loss is underestimated.
That is the loss based on this budget. And either we need to take expenses out or increase revenue.
Can I ask for clarification again? So when you say this loss, are you talking about the parenthetical 189042 in the rightmost column?
No, go up to,
You're going to
next
two.
page, go to the previous page.
Okay, let me just slow down a little bit. I'm having a hard time keeping up and I've even got a paper copy. So tell me on this page where you're
At
looking.
the very bottom where it says minus 213,000.
In parentheses is 213,420.91, which is also repeated on the summary page.
Yes.
Okay.
Right now, that's what we need to figure out is either we're going to reduce expenses by that much, or we're going to increase revenue. And how you want to increase revenue to come up with that much.
And the number of taps,
How many taps?
yes, total, inside town and outside.
About 1,500.
No, I thought it was 3,100.
That's not taps, that's users.
Right, and so the users are the people that are being charged.
No,
Oh,
no, because
Water companies have.
they're all being charged, but water companies, we only bill the water company. They bill the individuals on their system. And basically, it's about a 50-50 in-town, out-of-town ratio, which is just about everyone.
okay. So my question is, if we were going to divide that loss of $213,000, it means for each of those 3,100 people, we would have to increase by $5.80 per month for a user to bring it up to cover that loss.
Is that the right number of taps?
I'll have a little.
Yeah, so
Give us just a second, we're
You
looking
keep
it up.
going, I'll find that.
You may want to consider that the water bills for folks that are being overcharged may be resolved by next year. So that may affect the finances.
Can I just ask you what you mean by that? How are they being resolved?
Well,
And what are
I
they?
guess that it remains to be seen, but there are some accounts, mostly commercial accounts in town that have been overcharged
Okay.
for many years as a policy. It was something that I brought up many times as a citizen. It was never resolved. And it's entirely possible that we will owe back money and interest to the people who have been overcharged illegally.
yes, Ms. Ruth.
I would like to state that because that's not accurate, completely accurate information. The conversation was brought up, it was fully investigated. An administrator and legal interpretation of the charges was given and deemed accurate. And we continue to have one business in town that state that they are not properly charged. So I do not believe just a change in administrator is going to resolve an issue that's going to have significant.
As a matter of fact, if we may,
Yes.
where this item was left was before the RCAC study, which we just were talking about with Ty Clock. In, I think it was October. Our attorney indicated that the matter should be reviewed. And it was to be done after that study was finished. It was never taken up. And I will not take it up as a board member because I think it would be unethical. And it represents a conflict of interest for myself. But I would not rule out the possibility that there are other people who feel the same way and would like to see the matter resolved.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Weber.
Yeah, that is why something needs to be cleared up. It's like some number of tasks, charts.
Correct.
Like I guess just look at it, no, it was a single tap. For,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, it's complicated. And like I said, I don't want to get into it, but you can review meeting minutes and you can request records and communication before if you'd like.
The time to address that's probably when we have to actually look at our water fee structure and have to make changes to it, and then we should probably review those to make sure we have equity across the board.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that we have not brought into this is that we do have a reduction for people who are on leave. They do get a reduced water bill. They get how much, what percentage are we taking up at this point?
I don't remember the percentage, but it came out to $7 per month this year.
Right. So they didn't even get a water increase last time.
Does the
Because-
state fund us to the leave? Did we get much?
No,
We absorb that.
yeah, we absorbed that. And the last analysis, it wasn't that much money.
No,
So on this 200, back down to the water fund summary, and then we'll jump on to the next.
Sorry.
and Mayor?
Yeah.
While she's changing screens, we have approximately 1,600 actual base use units that are being charged with 3,100 households.
All right, thank you.
So you've taken this out from the one that I have, it's in the packet. Did that change on this?
Yes, it was,
Yeah.
it was,
35.
it was an inaccurate calculation.
Yeah, I can, that's good. That's good. So this, if we have to do our 25% reserve and, do we have enough reserves in the water fund to accommodate that, realizing that we will take a loss in order to, get the system fixed?
Yeah,
In my opinion, we do not have reserves to cover the loss.
So if we want to keep any expenditures on there, I'm just not sure what we could cut. To what degree are administrative salaries piggyback on the water?
The water fund is. About between 15 and 20%. These, I don't have that average, but it's between 15 and 20%.
Total payroll?
Yes. Of the total administration payroll.
The total administration payroll, 15 to 20% comes out of the enterprise fund. Is that
Out
correct?
of water.
Out of water alone.
Yes.
Oh, so if we added in the sewer, what percent, do you know what percentage you come out? Are we talking like a third of our payroll going to admin?
So at administration payroll is about 576,000. 127,000 is coming from water, 118,000 comes from sewer.
So almost half.
yeah, a little less, yeah.
Well. Yeah, 200,000, still a big chunk. So that's a huge bite out of the enterprise fund to keep admin afloat, is that correct?
So, it's based on actual time, that is spent on water and sewer, and I bet 70% of our time is actually spent on water.
It's eating the most admin time, because I know there's a lot of factors in there, whether it's
Yeah.
chasing grants or actually processing. All right. Can we move on to sewer? Any other questions on water? Thomas, do you have anything to add?
Couple of thoughts regarding, the 1 million gallon tank repair. My understanding is those repairs have already been budgeted in previous years. And we were told they had been executed, I think it was online last year. So I kind of question where, I mean, I understand that that's not the case. It's not paperwork to actually be done. But I do wonder if we could get a firm understanding of where that other money went, as well as any purchases for chemicals that were done with that understanding. But that's way outside the scope of what we're talking about. Beyond that, sounds like you and Cindy have been very thorough in your discussions and understanding. I don't see anything out of sorts. I do think that there's a lot of speculation in our expenses for repairs, especially, but there's no, like, we're doing the best we can. You know, I don't see anything that's way out of line.
Yeah, we're kind of stuck between fixed costs and expenditures, and there's no way to actually get too much movement in there, and also fixed income. So kind of caught in the landscape. We're also suffering from the fact that infrastructure in the water system has been neglected for so long that the bill is coming due. And that hurts.
Yeah.
It's something we should have been doing over the last decade.
One note is that regarding fee increases, I do agree that if fees are going to be adjusted, that weighing toward use rather than a base rate is a wise choice. In general, I'm trying to find where it is in the budget here from, or the audit from 2021. But as I recall, the overall scale of the enterprise fund has gone up by like 80% one year and 50% the following year, from 2020 or from 2019 to 2021. Sorry, I don't have it.
That's something that when I ran my models against, I had models used from 2003 to 2006. I had the water usage rate, and I compared them to the current one, sticker shock.
Yeah.
So we definitely have been charging a lot of money. Part of it is where did it go?
Where did it all go? Is that what you said?
Yes, where did it go?
So we have the water fund. Sorry, we got everything stuck together.
Well, we have, and while Thomas is looking for his stuff, we have done a lot of upgrades in the last 10 years, and we have not written grants for this stuff. So we have absorbed it in-house.
One of the problems is that we were only running on half our water, so the upgrades were done, it wasn't allocated properly. Getting the money to balance it all by far the most important thing to do, and it was neglected since 2015.
Well, it wasn't neglected because it was relying in 2018. So that's not neglect. And that was a huge sticker shock because the town administrator at the time did not bond that repair. And so when the repair failed on that line, we had to eat that entire cost.
That is like $250,000.
So that's where a big chunk of changes.
Did you find your table?
No, it
Okay.
keeps coming up the sewer fund.
Well, can we go on? To
Yeah.
that?
Like the increases have been substantial.
One more water question, but go ahead.
I just want to clarify so that we make sure we have the correct dates or years on. So the tank was lined in 2015. That lining failed. It had an over 80% failure. The administrator at that time released the bond, and that first lining had been done via grant money. So when the line failed and she decided that we did not need to keep the bond, we would just move forward. The town had to then save money in reserves to have the tank relined, because we could not go after a grant again. Because it was already done. We already did it with a grant, we let the bond go, and that bond was nearly $400,000, not $250,000. And we released that bond, the town released the bond. And so in 2018, the tank was relined with funds that the town had accumulated via some pretty significant changes to the structure, so that can be done in 2018.
When you say release the bond, you gave it back.
Yes, the town gave it back.
Gave it back to
To
the
the
bond,
company.
the original bond holder.
Yes.
Can I ask one more water question? And it is, Cindy and I talked about this today. So the audited fund balance for the water fund is $610,000. But that has to stay as reserves and for grant for future matching fund. Correct? So we cannot look to that to be our savior in this case.
Any other questions? We jump to
So let's go on to sewer.
Yes.
Before we do move on, I need some direction now. How do you want to fix this deficit? Do you want me to do it as an increase? Or do you want me to take out what expenses we think can be lessened and then offset that revenue?
But yes, Mr. Franklin.
I'm wondering if we could, first of all, lower the reserves to the rock bottom level reserves. We're required to have reserves for the 25%. We're required to have reserves to cover our loans. And make sure we're at that limit of those two and used all the money that could be left over. The audit did show, at least in my understanding, that there was some money in the reserves that was make sure we saw that.
And Ms. John?
There is a very small amount of reserves that are not being eaten up by those policies and debt reserve. However, if you do that, then you have nothing to use for matching funds for grants to pay for, i.e. the tank lining, and the other laundry list. So in reality and in best practices, we technically do not have any excess reserves that you could dip into to resolve this deficit
In the water bill.
in the water.
Do we have a motion?
No.
Okay, I move that we reallocate administrative salaries to the general fund. And yeah, we're gonna start with 100% for the 2023 budget. And that does two things. One, it makes it so that we don't have an interest in raising rates in order to pay for salaries and keep this fund truly self-sufficient if possible. The two, the reduced expenditure will in the future, as I understand it, impact the required reserves. So if that annual expenditure is reduced in subsequent years, our state requirement will likewise be reduced.
Because of the 25% associated with the.
Okay.
And that may be inaccurate. That's my
All right. So actually, then the motion is just to reallocate all that salaries back to general.
yes.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion, Ms. Jones?
Okay, so if you do that, then you're gonna create a deficit in the general fund, and I need to know where you want that, that money to come from.
Thomas Mark will jump on was to what degree can we pull back on? We obviously have figures part of the general.
You cannot take it from there. Those funds are, so, well, the majority of those funds are related to that badge and they have to stay in the.
Not why they have the access. So where, what kind of margin do we have to pull back? Because the admin of this administration payroll has been.
Right now, the general fund balance is balanced. And so all that I could pull has been pulled. And there isn't any more,
No access to reserves and general fund.
no. Not, no. Not yet, well, if you don't want to do street projects, which is what the, marijuana money is supposed to.
Yeah, that's dedicated goes to the
Then you're, in other words, if you do that, you're gonna rob Peter to pay.
So it comes down to what's most important. Like, auditors.
But, an enterprise fund, still has to pay people to do the, as if it's its own business. It still has to pay for its accountant, it still has to pay for, people to collect the, payments. And that is what administrative the salaries that are going to water or paying for is collection of, the payments and for the accounting of the department.
I just, for conversation's sake, getting back to public safety. So back the badge is providing about 21,500 a month, 258,000. County sales tax is 15,000 a month at 182,400. So I'm wondering, can some of that county sales tax that's being dedicated to public safety be dedicated elsewhere? Outside of the back of the badge point fees? And then third, my other question, our 1% of our sales tax is going to public safety from the town sales tax of the three. Is that was that statutory? That 1% of the state, the local sales tax goes to public safety?
It was 1%, and that was part of the agreement is that
Yes.
back the badge, was that we would maintain the revenue in the police department that was there before they added back the badge. And again, if you take right now, the police department balances to 0, so there isn't any excess there that can go from there to, we can't use the police department funds to clear a deficit in water.
Well, mostly I'm wondering about the taxes that are collected for public safety. If we have the ability to change the amount of our 3%
We
town
can
sales
move
tax.
it to other general
Right,
funds.
yes.
But they all balance right now, so.
No. But we're in a place where we have to start thinking a little bit outside the box. So I think answers to these questions are kind of pertinent in terms of what flexibility do we have within the umbrellas that have been created that budget. Sometimes, so my question is, our 3% sales tax, is 1% going to public safety required by the vote? By our ordinance
At a
statute
minimum of 182,000.
has to be provided?
But in the past, it was 1%. So, but the cut at that date, it was 182,000.
And that county sales tax is 182,000 annually, and the town's 1%, you had provided, my answer to my question is 306,300. So there's an awful lot of our local sales tax going to PD, and I wonder if it can we have some of it go elsewhere?
It can be reallocated.
Okay.
However, you're going to again be robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Well,
Pardon?
I'd like to go back to our discussion center.
Okay, so it's reallocation of all admin salaries to general. fund.
I'd like to speak.
Yes, please.
An enterprise fund is supposed to be run just like a business. Whoever's working enterprise fund is supposed to be paid for the enterprise fund. Take all the admin money out of the enterprise fund, then falsely represents the business. All I'll say.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Yes, Mr. Mark.
Rick, did you want to say something?
That was my point.
Yeah, a couple things. One, this motion is for the purpose of discussion. So I think 100%, is probably maybe inappropriate. And I think that if somebody has a different idea to answer Cindy's question, take a motion after the vote. So a couple of things, I've mentioned the reserves. Regarding backup badge, if you look at, see what page we are in the packet. Page 75 of the tonight's packet regarding the audit. That's page 6 in the audit. We have the expenditures year over year, 2021, 2020, and 2019. So we had public safety in 2019 was $321,000, 449. 2020 was $335,270, and 2021 is $450,674. So my interpretation of this is that we are obligated to retain about $320,000 of expenditures in public safety, whereas the difference of about $120,000 is back badge, right?
No, 182,000.
182,000. Okay, well, it's my math doesn't add up. So if we have that, whatever our obligation is, we should know what the difference is between our public safety spending and our obligation to retain for back to badge. So that difference could be recouped there. Rick, are you with us? Sorry.
I'm trying to find out where you are.
That was page 75 of the packet. Page 6 of the audit report. There's revenue source and expenditures for the general fund for 2019, 2020, and 2021. With broken down by department. Beyond that, our general fund budget has grown year over year. On that same page, 2019, 36% growth, 2020, 5% growth, 2021, 33% growth in revenues. That's taxes, fees, licenses, and governmental income, interest income. So the general fund itself has increased by 30%, 5%, and then 33% again in revenue. So if we're expanding our budget by 30% from this year again, I can't wait to see what we're going to do with all that money.
All right. So
I'm not finished.
we're at 6:03.
I'm not finished.
All right.
Beyond that, I would like to see an accurate accounting of the time that is actually spent on the general fund items versus the enterprise fund items. I appreciate that the enterprise fund is to be known as a business. I feel like it's not been. This is part of that. If we could have a business where the employees do not clock in and do not clock out, we would be very poor business managers. And right now, that's not what happens. They don't clock in and they don't clock out for the enterprise fund. So we don't have an accurate accounting of how much time is that can spend. It's a guess. It's an estimate. It might be perfect. It might be right. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying we don't know what it is. And if we are to run this enterprise fund as a business, could we outsource this administration? And could we do it for less than $200,000?
You want to create a water district?
No,
Not a water district, but.
no. Not even close. That would be a whole.
No, I mean a water district. There's an alternative to us running it because we
Right.
are the.
Yeah.
we
No,
the trustees are the-
It's a municipal water system,
Right, but it's
an enterprise
like
fund.
a governing body.
Right.
If this
Sorry.
continues, we are not going to get through anything but this. We are not going to touch the sewer fund. We are not going to touch the garbage fund. Mr. Markle, you want efficient meetings? Then you want a 3-minute limit on what you're going to talk about?
Yes.
Fine, your time is up,
And
sir.
I appreciate your urgency. However, you have not been enforcing a time limit yet. If you'd like to do so for our next meeting, fine. Nobody's been timed yet. I have the right to speak. I'm almost finished. I appreciate your respect.
So in order to resolve this, what about if I pursue what can be clawed back out of it? I mean, Cindy stay in that flat, we're all balanced, but let's review the numbers and see what we can come up with. I saw that growth too. First, the audit, which is, we'll be approving later tonight. Personnel expenses for the enterprise funds over $500,000, $527,200. That's pretty high anomaly when I went through the audit. So what can we claw back out of it? It's something that I think we need to explore as part of the water sewer traffic committee in discussions and
Yes, yes, please.
I would also like to remind that you have added an administrator and so I can run the scenario without the new administrator and see where that comes out. There's also a position added because it was stated that we needed additional help to run the plants. I can remove that, and then, so I can give you some scenarios that will work. Reallocating more funds to the general fund is not in my opinion, an option, but we can run scenarios if they would like to work with me on that. But those are some options, is to remove the administrator position before you hire, and then also remove the additional position for somebody to run the plant.
All right, thank you.
the other thing we could do is increase just the usage rate, keep the base rate steady, take the model, put in a new database on it, run it against 2021 and 2022 and see if it produces real numbers. And then we'll know what we have to do.
All right.
I don't see any way of escaping.
All right, so we have a motion and a second on the table. We now have 3 people in the public who want to speak. Yes, Watson?
Just that I really appreciate what you're trying to do here, Trustee Markle, with trying to stem the costs by putting in the general fund. But I do want to point out, general fund is funded by the town taxpayers, the citizens, and half of our users are out of town. And I'd like to see them pay their share of this business that we have too. And I'm afraid it would take it out of our pockets. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. So it's almost like comprehensively and holistically, how do you look at this and maybe make a motion to look at every aspect of all these different departments and see what can be cut here? Like, do we really need the $55,000 for that police vehicle? Do we need to change out that kitchen? Like, where do these all add up, this stuff? And you would get to 200,000 pretty easily. And the idea of right now, what is the priority for this town? I personally think it's the water. I agree. So shouldn't everything then with those lenses be funneled to the water system? Sometimes we're just going to have to tighten our belts. That's all there is to it in a couple of years, and just direct all that money to the water system. So if the badge is bringing in enough money, and you can take some of that 182,000 that's already designated for the police department and somehow siphon it into the water. I mean, these things are available to you,
Cannot be.
it's against that. You can certainly look at the stuff that you're sort of spending the money on in all these different departments and cut it, right? Thanks. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yes, ma'am. All right. All right, we have a motion on the table to reallocate all added salaries to general fund. Is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Opposed? All right.
No, but I'm glad you brought up. We do need.
Move on to sewer.
Yeah, sewer is easier. Water's always. Okay, income and sewer. It's we're looking at 540 and 550, pretty much the same.
We have a draft of this one.
It's down to expenditures. Big difference here is repairs and maintenance. That would be 70.1.
50.
Yeah. So we're looking here, going from 44,000 to 124. Needs to be done, the sewer system in bad shape.
What page are we on? I lost.
So go down to page 23. That's it in the expenditures that I could see. In the summary, the sewer fund summary. Down.
Summary, I'm sorry.
Okay. We're looking at unassigned fund balance. That would be getting reserve down a little bit more.
This is the part, this is the section that matters, the rest of it down below.
Yeah.
That's suggested reserves. So we're looking at a deficiency.
Their net change,
Yeah.
So expenses will be going up because we have to do repairs. And the net change is 260,000, but down in reserve, you have down here where the unassigned fund balance is negative.
These are recommended, per.
Okay, so you can change those numbers then.
I did.
Basically,
What we need to figure out is what we're gonna do to make up that 266,000.
so in addition to one fund being red, the sewer fund goes into the red too. Questions?
so the sewer fund has fund balance of 1.3 million. So explain to me why some of that can't be used.
So 500 and some thousand of that is, was the money from selling that land. That could only be used for capital. Capital projects for, our agreement with
Okay.
that lender or that, grantor. The other is, combined with water and sewer. And so it, the debt reserve, when they're calculating the debt reserve, that is using water and sewer. So the, any, little bit of excess that is left out of that, you're looking, we could potentially use that, but then we are going to be in the same situation when they force us to redo that sewer plant. And then we're not gonna have any matching funds to go for a grant to update the lagoons or the plant itself.
So it's already, essentially that 1.3 million is already encumbered
Correct.
for current use and it would be folly to remove any money. It would be risky.
It would be risky. There is a potential for a very small amount. It's still not gonna fix your, there's not enough in there to fix your ducts.
Thank you.
And I will have a sheet when I present the draft audit that will show you exactly those reserves. I was trying to get it done for today and there was too many distractions. So I'll have to, I will get that for you.
Hey, thank you. I just wanted that because it looks like a lot of money sitting there
And
begging to be used, but it's already used.
Technically,
you mentioned upgrading it, talking to Jeremiah, plants at over capacity. I mean, the Japan plant has over twice the capacity, but way overbuilt. So no real upgrades are needed. It's all going to be repairs and maintenance. You look back and expenditure, that was jumping from 44,000 to 120.
But that's not agreed. The plant was overbuilt, but the truth of the matter is, the CDPAG is gonna require us to do a different type of process. And that's like 5 years down the road.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going.
We need to figure out a way to do it for ourselves. Yeah, it,
Unfunded mandates.
well, with that in mind, is 124.7 really something we need for this next year, or could some of that be put into a reserve to address the 5 years down the road? That I don't know.
The initial estimate by Jeremiah was less than that. But he's found that he needs to up his estimates because he's learning the art of estimating. It's not easy to do. So
Plus,
it's probably going to come in less than that. He originally thought it might have been about 45,000 to fix it, and then. So, but it'll probably come in less than that. That's the way you do it.
yeah.
You overestimate your expenses, you underestimate your income, and then you're not shocked.
Okay, any questions?
Questions, trash?
Yeah, let's try and hit trash quickly and then. Meeting.
Okay. So income, we're looking at be pretty much flat. And on our expenditures. I didn't see anything much different down this list either. There was there's one thing that kind of confused me to begin with on the expenditures is that there was a decrease in current payroll, 3+ up here at the top. So we went from 152,000 to 130,000. Your number's a little bit different than mine. So there's been a slight decrease in that, but you're also adding down below the 3+ increased positions, which is line 8052. That's 103,000, and that's the big difference there. So we're looking at the current payroll is 3+. You're talking about add positions 3+. I guess the number I understand.
Corey has asked, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
Corey has asked for, a driver and 2 trash throwers for trash. And so that's in the 2 trash throwers are included in that 100.
Okay, so those two balance out, but not quite. Right.
And I allocated as much out of trash as back to streets as I possibly could. And there was it's going to an deficit of
98, is it 91 now?
yeah.
Yeah, it's down, so that. Yes, 98 on ours, but we continually treat.
I just got additional information transfer, sorry.
So I guess that summary is all parts of the enterprise fund are running out of cost.
Rick.
One of the things that we need to look at is trash trucks sometime in the next 6 to 7, 8 years. And the last one cost us $250,000. And we need to have the funds available to do that. And I don't think we can get a grant to do that. And we also need to keep in mind that the landfill in Delta County, we better assume on some rate increases because they're running out of space. And that's becoming a big problem. And once the Delta County landfill closes, I don't believe that Delta County can afford to build one in Delta County. They'll have to do it with Montrose and Mesa County as a regional landfill. And it's going to eat our lunch with transport costs and the cost of the landfill. We're talking some mega $1 million.
When we were on council previously, we did allocate money each year to a new trash truck, but we're able to cash it.
The only other option I did want to mention to the board, and it is a little bit unorthodox, I do realize, but something that does come up frequently and seems to be pretty specific to Paonia within Delta County is the amount of recycling, composting, and dealing with refuse individually. So another thing that the board can always consider is contracting out trash services as a municipal entity, or stopping trash services when the truck life is up and allowing individual people to either haul or contract their own individual trash services with other entities such as Waste Management, Double J, and Roberts. The only issue that I initially see with that would be scheduling, especially when you have multiple trash pickup operations running within the same town, and location of trash, because some of those require you to go to the tote system, which has been highly debated at the town level, and our alleys will not sustain the tote system trucks to operate the way they would need to. And there's a lot of concern. Other concerns would be, do you want totes on the street? And if you're not the ones that are directing the trash, be ready to really enforce the trash regulations. But it is an option.
Okay, all right, so we're at 9 minutes for the next week. I would suggest we take one more comment and then we take a break.
Thanks, I guess. Try to be brief. My thinking on the landfill fees specifically are definitely the big question mark. And I think that this is really a good opportunity for all of us to become more involved in county affairs rather than local affairs. Cindy, you with us?
Excuse me, Mr. Martin, please carry on. This is not directed at it.
Oh, fair, thank you. So our relationship with the county, I know is fluctuates, say, on various issues. And I think that landfill fees are something that's been sensitive. We've been sensitive to price-wise forever. And I agree with Corinne's sentiment that we did in a unique community, really, in our county in a lot of ways. But one of the primary ways is people's awareness and dedication, regardless of your political ideologies, across the board. People here are really interested in doing what they can to preserve and the environment and reduce their waste. So I don't think we should rule out the possibility of looking into a local recycling program, a local composting program, and possibly if we can negotiate with the county as a municipality rather than individuals and say, hey, we realize that dump's getting full. Can we get a rate for our town that's distinct from the general rate? I don't know how it works right now, but my understanding is we're paying by the pound, just like everybody else. Yeah. Okay. So those are ways that I see to reduce our waste, to align our operations with our principles that I see as a community, and to save some money. So anybody have a motion? We still got 7 minutes.
We did that with the 1 can fee. In other words, we cut down, if you were willing to live within 1 trash can a week, which I feel about a third of, you got a reduced rate. And that was to try. I'm not sure how, are we really nailing the people? I mean, I have some neighbors that will put out 4 or 5 trash cans a week. It's just totally amazing. I don't know what they're putting in it, but are we nailing the people that are heavy users? I hope so.
Did you want to make a motion on something, Mr. Martin?
Make a motion.
Yeah.
We adjourn.
All right.
So-
Second? All right, all in favor?
All
All right, we are adjourned. We have 6 minutes.
tree removal, tree care, tree watering, it should cover. everything.
I know, but the thing is-
It is your responsibility, and I didn't want to be.
So,
It come down.
I mean, I can't afford it, the last estimate that I had was $5 grand.
always just take it out.
Yeah, and then for me to do what
How about a
they
no?
just leave.
Is that the one right in front of the house or is it?
It's right on the alley, right on the.
Yeah, that's your house then.
There's a little
Yeah.
flicker nuts. There's a baby.
There were flickers, scarlet,
Cute.
and I haven't parked my car underneath that for years because that's scarlet.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm terrified of watching. Elm tree, I like to take it.
And
back. I
elm
like to
is-
try to take it. It's not, it's an American elm.
It's an American elm.
It's not a Siberian elm. I'd like to be able to take it back so it's not. You know,
I know, and the problem is that there's no, I can't afford it. I mean, I don't have that kind of shit. I can drive it.
All right, so roll call please.
Mayor Backren,
Here.
trustee Knudsen. Trustee Smith.
Here.
Trustee Markle. Trustee Weber.
Here.
Trustee Valentine.
Here.
Trustee Stummer.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum and we can continue. First item on the budget, my glasses. All right, I'm here. First item is the approval of the agenda. Can I give a motion to approve the agenda?
The agenda.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next is announcements. Does anyone have any announcements? Okay, I do. The Mountain Harvest Festival has begun tonight with Harvest of Voices and will be in full swing all weekend. I highly encourage everyone to go out and have a wonderful time. All right, next is recognition of community or, yes, also, before we go any farther, I want to reiterate the rules. If no one is permitted to speak unless you've been recognized by the chair, that includes both staff, board, and public. Board members can speak twice on each agenda item during the first round and only once on the second round. Only comments from the public will be accepted during public comment periods. We are not going to interact with you or answer questions. Straying from an agenda item is out of order for everyone. We welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions. Please raise your hand and wait to be called on by the mayor. All comments should be directed to the mayor. All comments should be no longer than 3 minutes. Public may speak one time per agenda item. No name calling, demeaning comments, personal attacks. All out of order. Please be respectful of those around you and those who have the floor by remaining silent. Take all your side conversations out of the room, please. All right, recognition of. Yes, we probably do the podium. Words right behind you and You want to put it in the corner of the table here so that we can, yeah, it's so by popular demand, do you want the lectern on top? No. Would like to speak on the item that's not on the agenda, Ms. White.
I raised my hand, before you voted to approve the agenda and it was ignored. And what I have to say has to do with this agenda. And that is, you have 2 items of unfinished business, 7 and 8. And that's not unfinished business, that's new business. Just because it was on an old agenda that wasn't ever addressed, doesn't make it now unfinished business. I think it's new business at this point because you haven't heard about it yet. And I would have liked you to change that on the agenda before you vote on it. Maybe someone can make a motion to do that, to call it new business. Because sometimes when things are called old business or unfinished business, you just vote. Because it's already been considered. But this has not been considered yet. So I'd like to point that out. I'd also like to say you're going to be looking at a First Amendment lawsuit if you keep up with this, Mayor Bachman, trying to regulate the content of people's speech. And then other than that, I heard something in this last budget discussion, and I think it was Weber, Dave Weber, said pot for potholes. That's not what that money is supposed to be going toward. It's not all dedicated to the streets. If you read the voter question that the voters voted on, a portion of that can be dedicated to right-of-ways and landscaping, which means the right-of-way trees. It doesn't all need to be spent on the street paving or even the sidewalks. Keep this in mind. It's something that's very important, our trees in this town. We need to start spending money on trees, looking at how we're going to keep these wonderful trees here, how we're going to keep things alive, how we're going to plant new things. Our trees are so valuable to this whole town, and the voters voted to take a portion of that pot money and put it into, let's call it green for green. You know, I think that would be a better slogan. It's money that we've never had before. It's money that has never been dedicated to streets before. It's money that, it's new money that we can find something that we haven't spent money on before, which is our trees, and start putting it to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the board? Yes.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Medina Ryan of Northfork Senior Connections. It's good to see you all again. I wanted to give an update on the upcoming event, which is a week from tonight in Crawford at 3:30. And it has been moved up to 7:30 per the advice of people present. We have about 20 organizations in attendance, which means of approximately 40 staff from different organizations who will be there. And we are now working on rallying community awareness and support as this event approaches. It would be wonderful to see an outflow of people from each of our towns at this event. Some of the organizations that will be in attendance provide essential services to our area, including Hope West, ACID, CP, EMS, the Crawford Fire will be there. This event has a couple of different purposes, as was stated before, one of which is to bring volunteer-based organizations together for recruiting purposes, help organizations that are providing services meet together and understand what we all do so we can be emissaries, and of course, to inform the public and get those services to the people who need them. So again, that event will be a week from today. At 3:30, Crawford Town Hall. It is free and open to the public. It is for all ages. Students and families are welcome. And I hope to see as many of you there as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the board on something that is not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, let's move on. Yes.
Sorry, regarding the agenda, I just wanted to make sure, just to remind you, I guess, that there was a motion on June 22nd to review the Parks and Recreation Plan in September. It's needed to this agenda. So I was wondering if you might ensure that it's on the following.
All right.
Meetings.
What that is?
There's a motion from 6/22, I mean, six, June, right, 6 months is June, 22nd of June, to review Parks and Recreation Plan.
Is that the Paonia in motion? Yes, Ms. Ferguson.
Apologies, Mayor. Yes, the Parks Committee, because we had a Parks Committee member who had anticipated not being present to be part of that conversation with the Paonia motion, Parks, Recreation and Trails Master Plan. He had asked that we delay that, and so we did have it on October.
That's me. That was not supposed to.
And again, he was not supposed to be here. So,
Yeah.
so Paonia.
Yeah, it was not open. Thank you.
All right. Next up is the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Can I have a second? Second. All right, discussion?
Paige and I reviewed the disbursement.
Pass.
Yes, Paige and I reviewed the disbursement, found them in order.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Discussion from the board? All right, Ms. Martin?
Yeah, I noticed that we have a new employee, or returning employee, I guess. And I have not sure what the procedurally correct way to do this is, but I have concerns about our hiring practices.
Yes, Ms. Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Beckman. Dominic Beardsley has returned as a temporary staff member to fill an opening and to assist with specifically some concrete projects that Public Works is working on. And to be completely transparent, he is my son's best friend, and he has rented a room from inside my house previously. And currently, he is actually living with me again.
Yeah, sorry.
I just wondered what you meant temporarily.
Temporary living. Or he's a temporary employee. He is not on a regular salary, no benefits. We had an employee prior, he glimpsed he was in the temporary position. He's no longer in the temporary position. And so Mr. Beardsley, at the request of Mr. Heiner, who returned and assisting the town.
Yeah.
I'll make sure that it's clear for the record that I did not bring anybody's name up.
No.
And I mean that we direct our town manager to go to ethics training.
Yes, Ms. Ferguson.
Mayor Becker, that will be necessary. I'd like to inform the board that effective December 31st, I will be tendering my resignation with the town. Thank you.
All right, moving on. Any other questions on disbursement? Anything from the public? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. All in favor? Opposed? All right, that one's on. Next on is staff reports. Ms. Ferguson.
I'm happy to report that all contracts that were withheld for or were in place with officers who left the town of Paonia as of today have been paid in full. I've continued to work on all projects with the town at the town level that have been ongoing. At request of the board at a previous meeting today, I submitted the report from SRSA on all the issues and the recommendations that were made. A significant portion of those recommendations have already been satisfied, and we'll provide that updated SRSA list within the upcoming weeks to the board. Other than that, I have, well, I can report, I know Mayor Buckland, you'll plan to speak on this later in the meeting, but we had the planners come to the town earlier this week following Colorado Grand and stated that they were, Colorado Grand continues to be incredibly impressed with the town when they come for their events. They are very happy with staff and the interaction we have and the work that goes into maintaining the parks and what the town does for them. And we're very interested in other projects that the town had planned that they could provide grant funds in to support the town. So I know Mayor Beckram plans to address that a little bit later in the meeting, but I was happy to receive that information from Colorado Grant. And I'm open to any questions if the board has any questions.
Yes, as long as since we have no police or public works, if you have questions about those things as well, please direct them to the town administrator. Any questions for her on any of those 3 reports? Yes.
I had a question about, I noticed there was some code enforcement taking place in the police blotter here, and I wondered what the nature of that code enforcement was.
Primarily weeds and rubbish nuisance ordinance.
Great. And if I can add another thing, this is kind of associated with your report. Having seen the information from CIRSA, I'd really like to schedule seeing this building and the town building, and I'd like to do it on Wednesday at 9:30.
I have.
So, if you have something in the works.
I won't be, I will also apologies. I won't be here next week. I am taking the week off. And I am scheduling with Corey and others to do a tour of the building and the other buildings in the next 2 weeks, if that's sufficient.
That's perfect, but I realized that I looked at those photos and had no idea what any of it was, so thank you.
One of them was a light right up here and it's gone. It was an emergency light that doesn't work.
All right, we'll wait for your scheduled doodle thingy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board? All right, seeing none, anything from the public on those 3 reports? All right, seeing none. Finance treasurer's report. Anything to report?
I don't have anything,
Jones?
other than what's in the packet.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Jones? All right, seeing none. I'm sorry.
Hang on one second, get to it. So this is one of those overarching questions that I've had about reserves. So on page 55, the second page of bank balances, I'm just curious, at the top, the first entry there, which is the money market reserve, which very nicely keeps going up with some interest. So when that says reserve, is that the primary place where you have put cumulative reserves through all funds, or do you do any distinction? And if
We have several places that we keep excess reserves. That would be, we have 2 CDs.
Right.
We have an account in COLA Trust. So within that 1.7 million, some of that is general reserves. And then also the money market is where the larger portion is at this time. I am reviewing and have had discussions with the bank as to whether I want to keep all of that in that money market because the rates are going up in the COLA Trust. And when they're hiding in the Federal Reserve. But the hike in the Federal Reserve, it may be prudent to move some of that money to the COLA Trust. But at this time, it is where it is at this moment. But I have been looking at and making those considerations, but I have not brought those to the board as of yet because I don't have a good answer yet.
Sure, thank you for looking for a better rate, and COLA Trust is the state's investment vehicle.
Correct.
Provided by the state of Colorado. But one of the things I was curious about is, it is going up. How often do you actually have to dip into that money market to pay the things that reserves are for, the 25% that you hold? So let me rephrase my question. So most of this is money that we are holding as 25% reserve or matching funds.
Reserves and fund reserves are not necessarily the same thing.
Okay. We'll talk more about that.
Anything else from the board? All right, anything from the public on the treasurer's report? All right, seeing none, let's move on to unfinished business, acceptance of the unmodified 2021 PM audit. Presented on 19/22. Can I get a motion to accept the audit?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Discussion from the board?
I've looked at a lot of audits. This one was really well done. And I've seen some and noticed. I'd like to thank Cindy for providing all that data, to the auditor and the auditor for doing a good job. I didn't attend that audit meeting because I've been through that enough times. I spent the time actually sitting down with the auditor, pad, paper, pencil, and looking for anomalies. Main anomaly, which I pointed out during the audit meeting, was personnel expenses coming out of the enterprise funds. And that's abnormally high, so that's one of the things I'm gonna try to do. Thank you, guys.
All right, any other? Yes, Mr. Martin.
In our discussion, there was a discrepancy that Paige noted, I think, or sorry, Trustee Smith noted. Where the totals, I think, maybe on the wrong page. I have to go back to my notes, which I don't have, but I think it's on page 15 of the audit, page 8 for the packet. There's a 795,000. Something that like, I think it was maybe that one that didn't add up. Cindy?
Yeah, Ms. Jones.
That was corrected in the MD&A, and that is what is in your that was included in your packet was the updated MD&A, which will be incorporated in the final audit that gets submitted to the state. That page was correct. Those numbers should have matched. The one number was from the initial version of the audit, and I didn't catch. Okay, 4 of us didn't catch it when I changed it in the chart and didn't change it in the Word. But it has been corrected and is been sent to the auditors for to be incorporated in the final audit.
Yeah, thank you for that, Cindy. And I just want to echo Trustee Weber's comment that this is actually really well put together. It's understandable, it's comprehensive, and essentially the auditor found no corrections or deficiencies in our budget, which is the first year that I know of it's happened. So I just want to thank staff for what they've done for this budget. It's very comprehensive, and I really encourage the public to look it over. It's pretty easy to understand and reveals a lot about the health and history of our finances as a town.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Anything else? Yeah, Mr. Knut.
First of all, we had a pretty in-depth goal presentation on the budget quite a while ago. And one of the take homes for me was how important it is to be consistent with the audit. I believe this is the second year this firm's done. And I think it's really fourth year. That being consistent over time makes for better audits as we go. And so I just want to, first of all, echo some of the comments about thorough the audit was, what good information it was, that gave Cindy with yeoman's to work.
Anything else? And I would agree, Cindy has done just a magnificent job balancing everything that she's been balancing and juggling everything that she's been juggling. And she has made all the corrections that the auditors have requested of her in the past. And so she's just doing a fabulous job. All right, anything from the public? Yes, Ms. Watson.
So I was looking at the audit and I see that this language is repeated by them. And I suppose that maybe it's not part of the audit, but they're talking about the trash fund. You've been talking about the trash fund. But when I go to our ordinances, we have no such thing as a trash fund. We have a water fund, we have a sewer fund, we have a general fund. So my question is, we have a capital improvement fund, but there's no such thing as a trash fund. And I know it's been called part of the water sewer enterprise, but you can't included in water and sewer because the enterprise is solely for water and sewer. So I'm wondering if, I don't know, I guess the auditor just looks at the numbers and the funds that you've created, but maybe this is something that you can look at for the next budget. And I mean, maybe you can have a trash fund just out of the air, but I don't understand what the purpose of ordinances creating funds are. When you can have a fund that's not official, basically like that. And perhaps that's the town administrator attorney thing, or maybe it's the finance committee could look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from the public? All right, seeing none, anything else from the board? All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the audit. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion passes. So the next two items are associated with Mr. Bruner, and he is not present, and it seems to me like it is not appropriate to discuss this without Mr. Bruner present. So could I get a motion to continue these two items?
I'd like to move to continue these two items.
That's second. All right, any discussion from the board? From the public? All right, we have a motion and a second to continue items number 7 and 8. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right. Number 9 is Department of Local Affairs Innovative Housing Planning Grant. All right. This is supposedly the last go round on this. I again tweaked the grant one more time. And this is essential if we ever want to do any kind of affordable housing. This is also an integral part of our master plan. And to have somebody come in and do this for us would be a huge boon to this community. Someday the water moratorium will go away. And to have a plan for how to deal with that in a housing needs assessment, I think would be incredibly beneficial. The one thing that has really made Carbondale into Carbondale and Aspen into Aspen and other communities into high-end communities is the lack of affordable housing for the people who. I don't know how many people I know who have moved out of Carbondale because they could no longer afford to live there. So having a housing needs assessment would give us a partial road plan of how we were going to keep our housing for the people who live here. So I would like to get a motion for a couple of things. We need to look at this and we have to decide which of those strategies in red and green we want to consider adopting. Yes.
Before I make a motion on it, I like the ADU one.
Sure.
We have choices.
Yeah.
What's the feeling?
One of the things that we would have to do for an ADU is we have to change our residential zoning
Yeah.
for ADU. That's first. And second of all, we have to decide whether or not we want to require a water and a sewer tap. And then we have to get we're using our codes right now. Most of the lots will not accommodate another structure. We have a 30% maximum coverage of the lot and setbacks. Now, I'm not willing to compromise on setbacks, but all of these things need to be dealt with before we decide that we're going to allow ADUs. I would also like to say that we should probably roll into this short-term vacation rental by owner on this. And there's another thing that is not allowed in our residential 1 districts. It's not, at this point, we have numerous lots and we've had no public input. The neighbors were not consulted on whether they wanted a business in the R1 district. They don't have business licenses. We haven't addressed taxing issues. There's a whole host of issues that need to be dealt with. We're talking about a year's worth of work for the health council.
And the matter is, we do not have to have these strategies implemented to get this.
I think it's a great idea to implement the grant, but how are we going to write the grant?
So, well, we get the strategy, we write that strategy into the grant, and then we start working on it.
Okay.
And so it's just which, and we can pick more than one strategy. We don't have to just have one. And so the ADUs is one idea. The other one, there were a couple that were written into the original grant, but we can choose more than one. Yes, Mr. Martin.
So question before the board, I guess we don't have a motion.
No,
Right. The question is whether to authorize this grant or whether to authorize
sufficient.
the CP grant. I assume this is you are doing this board.
Oh, yeah.
And we have to determine what our strategy is in order to have the strategy planning grant
We have
issue.
we have to decide which of the strategies we will pursue. We don't have to have it in place. We just have to have a direction.
If there is a discussion, I think that I appreciate Trustee Stelter bringing it up, but any discussion involving short-term rentals, I'll have to recuse myself
Okay.
as the matter of financial conflict of interest.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have one suggestion, which is the ADU one.
And that,
So that's
two
number one.
items that were the most significant during the strategic planning session were water. Absolutely. ADUs, I've been approached on the street now over that, and also dealing with Airbnbs. These are items that previous councils just couldn't get settled on. They tackled them and balanced that. This is simply a planning grant, right? So Rick, what you pointed out, those echo out of planning. So they would tell us what would have to be done can make it work. I mean, when we go through planning, because we're good on, are we gonna do the planning internal or hire it?
No, it's a consultant who will be hired to. run
Right,
this
so I
program.
mean, and they'll provide recommendations based on our LDR and the rest of that stuff, and then we have to consider where that's appropriate. So, yeah, I don't see the Airbnb stuff, short-term rentals on there.
Right, the state, yeah.
Yeah,
that's what it
I
was.
agree, it's something we gotta solve.
We do, agree.
I've just been sitting really long, I'm done.
So does anybody else like any of the other strategies?
I like, which is number 10.
Yeah.
I believe, and. Well.
Okay,
Allow the development of a small square footage residential sizes. And
I
I,
can put both of those in there, right? Yeah.
and if I could just add, I'm not real keen on this use by right. It shows up
Yeah.
in some of these. I just don't, I think that's beyond our capability.
Okay, and that's fine. I mean, some of this stuff is beyond our capability. Yes,
And I really liked the the expedited development of unused commercial property. We've got one right on the corner of the school. And that's a big deal. That could be apartments, it'd be a mini mall. I mean, that would be an awesome thing, an asset to the town.
but we could put all three of
I can't
those.
afford it, so.
We can put all four of those in our grant, yes.
I just, what school, which school?
The Texas. The one that's up for sale,
Fourth somewhere, fourth and.
$14 grand.
Can I just add a point of clarification?
Yeah.
No. You said land next to a school,
Well,
and I didn't know what you meant.
that whole parcel is for development.
Right.
The whole thing is for sale for.
No, I get that. Sorry. I thought you meant there's a piece of public town Paonia land next to that.
No.
Sorry.
Mr. Markle?
Couple of things. There was quite a lot of work done regarding affordable housing by previous boards, back by the gas committee.
That
Had
was
a
great.
bunch of surveys
That was.
and exactly. It's one of the options on there. My understanding is that it was in general, was affordable housing. There were several solutions, as I recall, that were considered. And there was a lot of public input that got collected at that time. I think it'd be wise to look at that list before we finalize any approach to doing this.
Well,
grant.
we have to get it at this meeting or can't, because the date is October. Yeah.
How do we get that stuff?
Four things. First of all, I agree with the ADUs. I think that's good. I think it is expedited development process is important. there's two principles I'd like to see come in. The root to wealth for individuals is homeownership. So there's some component of homeownership built in, not just people living in low income housing and paying rent for the rest of their lives. So some component of homeownership. The other principle is disbursement, not segregation. In my experience, I've seen affordable housing segregated from the community. The street that I live on has an affordable housing unit that is right in the middle of a bunch of owner occupied homes. And it is fabulous because there's a really good mix in the neighborhood. So more disbursement, not segregation, home ownership, development process and ADUs.
Well, okay, well, I'm probably not going to write homeownership into the grant because it's not one of the strategies that the state has approved.
I thought they were trying to be creative.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, we pick strategies, but the planner can come in and include that absolutely in their plan as they move forward. Anything else from the board? Yes,
I was just gonna point out that this is all about getting the money to put out a request for proposal.
Right.
For someone to do
right.
the survey. So I'm bringing that up because some of these things could actually be written into the RFP. The previously provided information could be made known to the potential proposers that we have that as well as, so this is not a done deal, but these 16, we cannot deviate. These are in statute.
Right.
So these 16, we cannot modify. Right. We can just choose, and I'm glad to hear it's more than one.
Right.
So I just want, and one last thing, because shouldn't the grant be for 56,000 and not the full 78? Because
Well, if we make it for the 78, then if we have an overrun, then we are covered with it.
because you have the matching, you're also saying you're going to match.
Yeah, the 20%.
Right, but so are you really asking for 78 then, or are you asking?
We're gonna ask for
56?
78.
Okay, that you did last time. That's why I'm
Right.
asking the previous.
Yeah, well, things have changed.
So you can include the matching in the grant?
No, we have to come up with matching.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if you
Oh,
better off
oh.
by asking for 56
Yeah.
and not the full 78. That's what I mean.
All right,
No.
yeah. The whole thing is for 78 with our 20% match, which is,
19.5.
yeah, 19.
Right. But do you want the grant to be for 78 or 56?
Well, that's the way you write it, and then the
Okay.
matching is in there. I mean, that's the whole thing with
And that's,
the CDOT grant is the same thing.
okay. Thank you.
All right. So, yes,
I'd like to make a motion, since I
Thank
think
you.
we have an agreement here, amend me if I'm wrong, please, that our strategies that we're approving for this planning grant are number 4, the creation of an expedited development review process for acquiring or repurposing underutilized commercial property that can be zoned to include affordable housing units, including the preservation of the existing affordable housing units. Number 10, authorizing accessory dwelling units as used by right on parcels and single family dwelling districts that meet the safety and structure capacity considerations of local government. And number 12, allowing the development of small square footage residential units.
okay, do I have a
You're
second?
gonna repeat. Which number? Sorry.
Uh,
14 as well.
Can I have a second? Further discussion from the board? All right, seeing none, anything from the public? Yeah, Watson?
First of all, I'd like to point out the school building is not commercial property, it's public. It's not commercial. So you're thinking about wrong zone there. I appreciated what trustee Knudsen was talking about in the sense that number 16 is a really important one to consider. It's novel, innovative or creative approaches to incentivize affordable housing development. What could that mean? Could it mean that we have a lot of single people living in 4-bedroom houses in this town? Maybe there's a way to, oh, I'd like to add another bathroom so I can have roommates. I mean, I wouldn't mind taking in 3 people, but the thing is, I'm not going to share a bathroom with 3 people. So are there like incentives? Are there ways that instead of incentivizing developers, you turn the community into the developer? And that way you spread the wealth into the community. You know, we talk about segregation, and when I hear about these affordable housing projects, the thing that scares me is it's gonna financially rest on my back as a resident, and I'm not a high income resident. You know, affordable housing, I want to see affordable housing for me too. So, you know, I think a big component of that is the needs assessment. Do we have the jobs here to support? I mean, who are you talking about needs affordable housing? I think you really need to identify that. Are they people who live here? Are there people who are just kind of transient? Peonia has a great transient population who, and they might not need to own homes, but to have places for them to stay. So the ADUs, you know, possibly encouraging people to open up their homes, you know, that helps pay their mortgage. You know, it helps them maintain their yard because you have multiple, it's more of a co-housing situation. So I'd like to see this Peonia turn the community and the developers instead of, I know it's maybe a little more difficult, but it's more tidy to just say, oh, we'll give you the money, the developer, and you make a piece of property right for us over there. But I think to bring it in and integrate it into the community would be really important. And then, we don't have a code, by the way, that says we have a 30% maximum coverage. Our code right now actually says that we have a 30% minimum lot coverage that's required because there's a typo on the code that's been there for years that has not been corrected yet. So it's actually quite dangerous. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Anything else from the public? Yes.
I'm a little confused on where we're at with this, but I walk across a couple of different places in life. And one of the subjects that has recurred for the community in the recent past is whether or not we have affordable housing to retain medical staff. And the answer is not really. So we have a major transient population of medical staff, and that negatively impacts the longevity for everyone in the community. It inhibits the lifespan of the residents. And so, you know, one of the things that's being discussed throughout the community is how do we retain medical staff? And by proxy, how do we make sure that those medical staff are locals so that we're not farming that work out to nurses at a higher rate than we would have to pay them if they were local and coming out of one of our local schools. You know, I was in social work for a little while, and there are some inverse relationships that are going on across the country. And one of them is that over the last 60 years, median housing costs have gone up disproportionate to median income. 46% of the entire nation, and we are not immune, is overburdened by their cost of housing per month. And so about 15 years ago, the cost of housing per month was roughly between 15 and 20% of an individual's monthly income. And right now it's over 33% on average. Anything over 30% is considered overburdened, which means that that family can't either develop equity or an individual can't grow equity. And also from a personal standpoint, if I'm paying rent at that rate, I also can't develop the down payment for my own equity. And when I think about this in terms of expanding communities' capacity, what that means is that as an individual, I am continuously building someone else's equity. I am also not safeguarding my future and how I can use that equity to progress my longevity and quality of life. So, you know, I understand that there are considerations about how we would go about doing this. And this is not an issue that's going to go away, nor is the issue about healthcare workers. Prior to the pandemic, we were 60% understaffed for healthcare workers. That number has not improved. And that is addressing the boomer population. When the baby boomers' children come to maturation, that number is going to be exponentially worse. And so everything that we can do to mitigate that is going to improve quality of life. And it's also going to promote longevity of communities. And by proxy, safeguard economics.
Yeah. Anyone else from the public? All right, yeah, I was just gonna make a statement about how strong I support the affordable housing. And it is so obvious that it's critical need, and it's really to support people. I think a lot of people think it's people just traveling through for affordable housing. It's supporting, affordable housing will support our workforce, whether it be nurses, policemen, medical workers, anyone working any of the businesses in Paonia. And I feel if we do not take affordable housing seriously, Paonia will really drop down. And I don't think any of us want that. It's too great of a community. And the first thing we need to do is approve the housing needs assessment. That's critical because we can have affordable housing of all kinds, whether it's a part of an existing residence, new build housing, fourplexes, duplexes, whatever. There are so many opportunities in affordable housing, but until we know what our real needs are, we can't make the proper steps or decisions to get there. And I think it's critical enough we need to start taking steps now, not next year. And that critical step right now is the assessment. And I think almost everyone I talk to says that that the strategic planning meeting, I think that was the biggest issue there was affordable housing for this area. And I have personally gone to the tour of the affordable housing in Fort Collins. So nice. They really did a fabulous job. Several other small communities, Ridgeway has done a wonderful job. And Norwood will be completing their affordable housing in December, which will be a great tour. There's an incredible organization in Seattle, and it's totally grassroots, and it's all citizen funded. And they have come up with affordable housing, which is amazing. I mean, it's expansive, and as it grows, more citizens in Seattle become a part of this. And they really, I think they've blown the lid off of affordable housing because it is so successful on every level. Now, that's too much for us, but we could take little glimpses of this and integrate it into this community. That's about it. Thank you. Yes.
Move to amend the proposal to add 16 to the list. So to accommodate some of Dave's concerns and to open the possibilities for.
Okay. All right. Do you second that?
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second to amend the main motion to add number 16 to the list of strategies. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. All motion carried. Yes.
Get a discussion.
Oh, yes.
Second, I'll do another motion.
Yeah. Well, we're still dealing with the motion for the strategies. Yeah, the overall.
Yes, I have questions regarding number 3 is the only one that seemed to have a quantitative analysis of what low income or affordable housing might be. Do we have any demographics as far as the percentage of households that we have, the annual income of which is at or below 120% of the area median income? Households that size in the county? Do we know how much we're talking about? Census.
Yeah, the census data, and we are considered a disadvantaged community, and one of those measures is below median income.
Yeah, I assume it's a percentage.
Yeah, and that's a percentage.
Yeah, but my question is like, what percentage are we talking about right
And
now?
that is part of what the needs assessment will give us. It's
Okay.
going to find out how many people would qualify and what do we need to meet those.
Okay, thanks. And aside from that, number, there's another one there. No, that was 7, is interesting, and I was wondering if anybody had any further information or thoughts regarding that. Was with respect to infrastructure, the creation of a dedicated funding source to subsidize infrastructure costs and associated fees related to publicly owned water, sewer, storm sewer, roadway infrastructure. So I'm not sure exactly how that might be implemented.
Yeah.
But it sounds interesting and compelling because I know that that's the hangup that you mentioned at the beginning, is the water management, right? So if there is action to deal with the effects of additional housing on those systems, I think that would be a very important thing to explore. But I'm not sure this means what I think it means. So I don't know how to get that information.
I would suggest you talk about it.
Okay, very well. I move that we include number 7 with respect to infrastructure, the creation of a dedicated funding source to subsidize infrastructure costs and associated fees related to publicly owned water, sanitary sewer, storm sewers, and roadways infrastructure, as well as the 4 existing categories.
Do we have a second
Second.
discussion? Yes, Mr. Stone.
We're going through the budget right now, and I would like to know how we're gonna fund that. And as a builder, I can tell you right now that 25% of your costs are getting the utilities to the lot. And then you go on from there. Generally, what we do is we have the development pay for sewer extensions, whatever. And then the town accepts the extension. And then we go from there, water, sewer, electric, cable, whatever. And that's how we've done it here traditionally.
The other thing I would like to mention is this is a strategy that the town is going to take. This is not going to be something that the state or this planning grant is going to look at. What it's going to do is that we're saying we're going to create that.
Well, that's kind of part of my question is like, that's not what that says necessarily.
But that's
What it says is with respect to infrastructure, creation of a dedicated funding source to subsidize. It doesn't say it's not grants. It doesn't say that that we have to pay it. Basically, we can set up some sort of community fund, say that, oh, I don't know if somebody's been overcharged for the water bill, say, rather than that going to town, it could go to a fund where we could subsidize someone else's payments.
Well, my thought is we already have 4 strategies. As it is, we've got a lot of things that we are telling the state we're going to work on and adding another one.
Is this
on
gonna
top
be
of
it?
that for a tiny little, for this grant seems overkill. Seriously overkill.
Thanks for your input, Mary.
Yes,
I believe it would obligate us to the content of the request for proposal. And I'm afraid that we don't want to put so much in that proposal that we can't afford the request, that we can't afford the proposals to come in. So I think we need to be a little bit judicious as to what issues we want to address.
Fair enough.
yes.
I agree with Rick. It's been tradition to have development pay its way, and we've had it's worked for us for a long time.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second to add number 7. All in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion fails. So we have a motion on the table to accept number 4, number 10, number 12, and number 16 as our strategies. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now can we get a motion to submit the grant? Further discussion? Yes.
So the discussion item is, does the state help us write the request for proposal? Or is that done in-house?
I think we need to do it in-house. We can probably get DOLA to help us with it. Since this is a DOLA grant.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, anything else from the public? All right, seeing none, all in favor of submitting the grant? Opposed? All right, that motion, yes.
I just want to make a comment that I really appreciate the process of going through the grants now, because we had asked before grants kind of plopped in our laps in previous board meetings. And it's nice to see strategies, costs, staff time, all those things.
Next on our agenda is the revision of resolution 2017-10. With the thought, we're only at 7:24. We have 2 hours to play with this sucker. So does the board want to tackle this?
I move that we adopt all the recommendations presented by trustees Knudsen and Johnson. Something.
My packet.
Last packet.
I don't know that.
I know.
And I was the one that said, could we please have the other iterations included in this packet, so I am not prepared to do anything of any consequence, except to say that we really need to put executive sessions back into this document. They have
Oh, we
been,
just listed as,
they have been omitted. The executive sessions have been completely omitted.
well, we've been only putting them in when we need them.
Well, no, it is part of it's part of our normal, but I don't know why they've been omitted. All of Roman numeral 3 is not included in this iteration in our packet.
Right.
And I don't know why we would not include an executive
We
session.
don't need them.
Well, but I think we need to all understand what they are and how we do them.
Well,
I don't know why we delete them. Anyway, other than that, I'm not prepared to.
Yeah, I agree. You just made a motion for something of which there's no information in the packet, so. Move that we table this until we have, the tabling can be done from the town. So move that we table this until the proper information is included in the packet, so we can make a decision.
second,
Seconds.
all in favor?
I
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, we're down to the mayor's report. So as trustee, or as town administrator Ferguson said, Colorado Grand came in and were raving and they want to give us money. And so we thought, wow, since they're so anxious to give us money, why don't we do the town park bathrooms as well as the Apple Park bathrooms? Unfortunately, Corey was not able to give us a figure on what that's going to be. I think in his original things, he said about $10,000. And what we can do is we can keep everything in the grant the same, except we're going to include the town park bathrooms so that our ask is going to be closer to $20,000, and we'll keep our matching still the same at 3,000, and we'll just write a bigger grant. How does the board feel about that one? All for it. Yeah, that's right.
So just so I'm clear, it's to add $10,000 to the total to make it 20,000
Approximately.
to update the town park restrooms as they said.
Approximately.
Okay, what does that work entail?
Yes, Ms. Ferguson.
Items that are being considered are, it occurred to us that we've been continuing to talk about doing some major overhaul, which included walls and insulation, when really what we would need to do is look into building permanent doors on the two restrooms and updating the electrical to allow for electric baseboard heating, so that we would have year-round bathrooms that would suffice for winterization. We could remove the portable restroom at that point, and the restrooms could be accessible year-round in town park. Other items that are, so doors, heating, some painting and minor upgrades to any plumbing that may be necessary.
And so, yeah, when I get those figures, I will include them in the grant. Yeah.
Does that include vandal proofing?
I wish.
Well, vandal abeyance.
There you go. That's a better word. Yeah, no.
But stainless steel, basically prison units will alleviate a lot of our problems. We seem to lose at least one or more toilets every year. And it just shattered and we just have to replace it. I know it's $100 and the stainless steel ones are $8 or $9. But we've got neighbors asking for money from our insurance. And that's bound to raise our rates.
Well, I would check on that. Ms. Ferguson, are we losing a toilet a year at least because of it being red?
No,
No,
no. We're not replacing one, no.
that's why the Apple Valleys are closed.
Oh, there's serious plumbing problems with that.
Okay.
You can't get in them to man.
That's right.
Within 100 years.
Make sure you don't
That's the-
sit in it. Just lock your bathrooms completely. That sounds like a solution.
It works.
So then I will go ahead and change the grant and make it for a bigger grant. Okay.
Is there public comment here?
There was a question.
I'd like to express my concern. I think this is a real folly to think about winterizing the town park bathrooms and leaving them open all year round. Number one, have we budgeted the cost of maintaining them and cleaning them all year? When we had the parks contractor, when the football season was over and winter came, the bathroom shut down. It's not like we have a huge presence in the park over winter. Many mountain communities don't have public restrooms in their park in the winter. It's really a luxury, and we're gonna look at increased salary costs here. I don't think this is being budgeted. I think it's a really bad idea. I know when Mike Altenhofen was there, he had problems with teenagers stuffing the toilets full of toilet paper and then taking shit on the top. I mean, we can hardly maintain our bathroom here. At one point, we were having to lock the bathroom in our lobby because of people bathing in it inappropriately, because of transients coming in. I really think it's a bad idea to think about having a heated town park bath. It's unnecessary. Give the park a break in the winter time. There are not that many people there anyway. Maybe the Colorado Ground would be more interested in putting some money into tree pruning on right-of-way trees on the town streets. We have so many branches that could come down on a car. They're really dangerous to both pedestrians and traffic. And I think our grant should include, let's stop getting fixated on the town park. There's Colorado Trust money for the town park. There's always money for the town park. But the street trees, which are on town property, are neglected and ignored and have no funding. Please ask the Colorado Ground if they could put some money toward maintaining our street trees. There's some very dangerous ones. There's some that need to come out right now, and that costs a lot of money. Please consider that. Maybe you might make a motion right now or change a motion. Thank you.
All right.
Is that something that,
I think
the sidebars on those grants?
we could do it. The thing is, again, you scatter shot it. And it's better to, if you're gonna write a grant, you write a grant for one person. You don't write a grant for 12. For example, Colorado, CDOT grant was to change Fifth and Grant to do the intersection. The SRF funds is to do the pipe and to reline the tank. And you can't just put everything and its cousin into a grant and expect that grant to go through.
I do think Suzanne makes a good point.
But we have money in the marijuana fund to do those.
And I meant winterizing, having
Oh, okay.
open 20, all year round.
Okay,
That I think is a good point.
okay. Yeah,
Madam Mayor, I want to put in perspective, basically we're talking $20,000 grant. We're certainly not going to want the best bathrooms for 20,000. Just call it upgrading the bathrooms. Yeah.
all right, yes.
Motion.
There isn't. So we're talking,
What are we talking about?
we're just talking about. Any committee have a report? Oh, very good. Okay, so parks. It's an.
We met at the River Park this past week with representatives from the Western Colorado, or Western Slope Conservation Center. And Rick and I have a draft management plan for the open spaces, the trails around the Gunnison River in that park. There's some asks that they have of the town that I'm just going to list them. You don't have to make a decision tonight. But one of the asks is some kind of bear-proof trash can stuff. Some kind of a possible pit toilet that would be, not a water use toilet, but the kind of Forest Service stuff. There's a porta potty that's supported by one of the donors to WSCC that is there at the time. But there's no regular facility for a restroom for the river. Also grading materials of the parking lot is the question. And roles and responsibilities. Apparently, there's a memorandum of understanding between the Conservation Center, and it's time for the board to really look at that memorandum of understanding and get clear, is that what our agreement is? Because it's been several years since we looked at that. I don't know if I understand it.
And also the extension of the park and the trail down past the high school or old high school, and the possible bridge crossing the river. That's a big issue. They want to have us at least knowing about this and be willing to sign on as, not as sponsors, but as I guess co-owners, because we're going from town-owned property to town-owned property. And they're talking about funding this, and it's going to be a fairly large thing. And they're also talking about having it done with locals. So that's a real plus. You know, it's going to put some industry, some money into the local economy. And it's 160-foot bridge. So that's a fairly capital intense thing. But then there's also questions of maintenance over the life of the bridge. And there's several other things.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Didn't we approve? Didn't that come in front of us?
They were writing a grant.
Engineering firm?
Yeah, they were writing a grant for as the engineer.
Did they get that grant? Or did-
That I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Just to clarify, we're going to present that draft plan from the Parks Committee to the board. We're just giving you a heads up about this is what's coming in way. So the process is Rick and I are reviewing the draft plan, giving them feedback, and then the draft plan.
Thank you.
Great. All right, we're done.
Personnel.
Personnel.
So we sent out a little tricky RFP to distribute the call for applications to the administrator. That was the yeah, it's sort of a strange thing. Rather than the whole recruiting process, we're just at the front end distribution. So we sent that up to 9 different places. One response basically said, you can't afford it. Can't afford it. So
Good point.
but the deadline is. Yeah, and then we've got, what is it,
There's 11 applications.
11 applications.
So that begs the question, do you really need a hiring firm? You already
When
have
we
a woman.
endeavored to do this process, we didn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's,
Ms. Watson, you have not been recognized by the chair.
and Dave, you made an important distinction between people who have the job and people who aren't necessarily looking versus the quality of that, or the nature of those candidates is different. And so we're addressing the concern that we need to look for people who have the job. So.
Can I close? I can't.
Sure.
Right,
Sure.
yeah. All right.
Okay, so, we've sent that RFP to have people do that distribution in 9 places. We've got 11 candidates in, and why don't you take over? You posted.
Well, I sent you all an email that showed you everywhere it's posted, and some are gonna expire in 30 days, some are good for 90 days, some are good for 60 days. So we could easily keep advertising, maybe modify the application, change the scheduling. Potentially, and if I can repost it, I don't know, but so we have that ability to continue with most of those. And I can probably extend the freebie ones potentially. So, and the thing is, we won't know until October 7th because people have to mail these things in. And there's a proposal, we can't see them. So we really won't know till October 7th. And people have them, and we don't know if they're going to submit a proposal. Because we won't know until they mail them in. So I don't think there's any harm in continuing the process personally. The process of looking at the RFP If we don't get any, well, that certainly answers that question. If we don't get any proposals from the request for proposals, and we really don't know until October 7th.
Well, here's my concern. We just had an announcement from our town administrator. She's gone at the end of the year, which means we are out of town administrator, we are out of town clerk, and who's gonna run this town?
Well, I wanted to confirm that you were referring to your clerk.
That is accurate.
Okay, because it wasn't
So
clear.
we have no one to run this town. We have two huge positions that we have got to fill by the end of the year.
I think we need to talk to Dolan about an interim. I really do.
Right.
Think, because they're there to help. We did get an application from one person who only was interested in interim. So I've not included that person in the 11. I don't know how viable that application is, but given that, and now I understand the full extent of the resignation, I think we need to go out and look for an interim, because we will not have someone hired by January 1. And in the absence of an administrator, the trustees can fill in for certain pieces of this according to our ordinance. Not that I want to,
And that's the thing, you know, the knowledge base
right?
of what
Yep.
Ms. Ferguson has done is so broad and comprehensive and deep that I don't think any group of us could be able to take over that job.
Right, and we'd have to have a big sit down ahead of time, as would an interim administrator.
Right.
So I think, given what we just learned tonight, I think tomorrow is a reach out to Dolan.
Something personnel that you would like to do.
All right, we have more to do.
Yes, you need it.
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Ferguson.
I just want to. I'm not assuming that anyone is, but I want to make it very clear that I'm not angry and disgruntled. And I'm more than happy to participate in a transfer of or a hiring of a new clerk, and provide information to them. Sit with the person, do whatever you need me to do and provide information.
Which of course begs the question, I'm not sure the town has ever advertised for a clerk before. We're in a long time,
It's been a long time.
but
Having hired a couple of, we usually work internally if we have the skills. If someone's already after that, so the deputy clerk, if it's feeling of. Yeah,
I would not, currently your deputy clerk is only working part-time as she has an infant at home. And, is from, I will confirm, but I don't think that that is a feasible option.
but we have put out requests for a clerk and have gone through that process. and hired them.
yeah.
I have spoken a lot with our deputy clerk and I'm very aware of.
Designers. Thank you. So I think we need to talk about that as well. And I would think that hiring of a clerk could be done more locally. In our realm here. So, so we can talk. And then if you don't mind, I'd like to visit. The three of us can't really visit. No, but I mean, Dave.
We can if it's posted.
Right, it needs to be posted.
So maybe let's do an email schedule. Three of us, and maybe the three of us could talk. So if we could get it posted in time.
Oh, yeah, you could, Friday,
Got it.
you could post a Monday meeting on Friday.
Yes.
What time?
This Friday,
Or Monday. That's four.
yeah, on Monday's cool.
Um,
I gotta meet with Cindy, I think I might.
Monday's the 26th. I need to set something at 10 or. Available with you anytime. Sure.
Can you guys, yeah. 10:30 Monday?
No, I can't do it at 10:30 on Monday.
So let's see.
I can do it anytime after.
Okay, why don't you guys just pick a time and mail it from now, then to fit.
Well, we'll just do right now. Why don't we say, John?
4.
Well, 4, I hate to do 4 because then we hold up the staff having to stay beyond 5 if we keep talking. Could we go a little earlier in the day?
Yes.
Okay, you pick it.
3:30.
All right. Because that's a little better. This is like, I know, like, you guys like to be able to leave at 5, so, all right, is that right? Can you post that?
Yes.
For 3:30 on, okay,
I have a topic, apologies, what specifically is the topic for the agenda?
It would, well, I'm just gonna throw out discussion of process hiring a clerk. Is that,
I would say, town administrator.
well, and we can discuss town administrator as well.
And interim, stick interim.
All right. Okay, it started 3.
Yes, yeah, three's actually better for.
You don't want to, yeah.
All right. Anything else from personnel?
Could I just ask? I'm probably not available to make a call to Dover tomorrow, so let's wait till after our meeting. And then we'll decide. Thank you.
All right, finance, anything else from finance? Pardon?
I have a comment on personnel.
Oh, sure.
This is the first meeting I've been at where I've heard of Corinne's resignation. I first served on this board in an appointed position under one town manager. Corinne stepped up to the plate and was willing to assume 2 positions at the request of her. She has, I want to publicly thank her for her perseverance through this time. She has worked really hard in facing onslaught of criticism from the public, which in many cases I think was unfair. She saved the town a lot of money. She stabilized the personnel of the town, and she's brought in some really good people since then. So again, I just want to thank you for your service.
Okay, anything else for finance?
We just paid the bills, that's it, unless you got anything changed.
No, the water sewer trash?
There'll be a report after we have our meeting. A water advisory committee meeting. Yes. Part of this stuff.
Okay, public safety?
We're trying to have a meeting today about code enforcement, and we're going to take that back until next week, probably on Friday. We'll be asking for a posting of that meeting.
Okay,
And
and
one thing else on public safety, Matt Lamingers approached me twice about, well, various codes that are in, and I've referred him to public safety. Did he talk to you? One had to do with, a bus part. Yeah, you know about that one. So he went, asked me what the section code was. And, the other one had to do with how police could go onto private property in order to red flag stuff.
Gotcha.
Did you guys talk to him about that?
We're going to test the plan.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to pass it on to you.
okay, free board.
We'll be there on Sunday, festival, and next meeting is second Tuesday of the month, I think that's the 11th.
Yes.
Yeah.
The time?
5 o'clock, we're gonna meet in the park. So it could be kind of chill. Let me know.
One question for the tree board, it's been brought up about hazard trees not in town. One thing about Colorado Grant is they would like trees not to fall on their cars. They come. So if the tree board could consider taking a look at it, you're gonna, I'm assuming assess town park, because that was something on the park committee that looked at town park that we wanted to refer to you. The second thing is what's happening on the streets. The tree board can look at some of the right of way stuff that's been brought up. So that'd be great.
Yeah. So far, we've talked, we don't have a budget, we don't direct the facilities maintenance or anything else. We have no jurisdiction there at all. So far, we've talked about this whole permitting process. If people want to cut down a tree or do maintenance, that they should use a good service and how to, because we can't require that. We can't require training, we can't do certification. That's not us either. So far we've talked about how to kind of incentivize that with a recommended list that would be attached to the permit. So I can see now probably at that next meeting, I don't know if you'll be there too.
Possibly, I have a dental appointment at 3 p.m. So it's gonna be close. I'll tell them, but
I can see we need to become more active in the whole process of getting funds redirected and making the case for it, all that. That's a big deal, but why not? So point taken. Thank you.
Yes.
I just wanted to, I know you know this, but I wanted to remind everyone that we had one of the city foresters do a complete survey of every tree, and I believe that spreadsheet with that huge spreadsheet where she just looked at every detail of every tree. I believe it's on the webpage.
With the tree wood.
So I think you get it. So anybody that wants to can look at that, look at the trees in front of their own house. Or their neighbor's house.
I didn't go into detail. That's Tammy Long's
Yes, came in long since.
Forest Service, her inventory, but we intend to use that to prioritize work.
Yeah, and those are not personal trees, those are public.
Yeah, we can't really. If there's not so much we can do about right-of-way trees, there's less we can do about personal private trees, as in nothing.
Right. And that's what her entire thing was, public trees. Yeah.
All right, next thing on the agenda is how did we do? Well, for an agenda, we have what, 3 items?
We had a bunch of people from the community join us at the very end, and I don't know if they have an agenda item or something they want to present. This. You're on the spot. You're on the spot. How about this? It's warmer in here.
Yeah.
So you're looking for shelter?
Yeah, Mr. Markle.
Yeah, maybe just to let everybody know that if there is something that you want to bring before the board, there's a time at the beginning of each meeting where anybody can address us on any matter, whether it's on the agenda or not. And I wanted to thank Medina left, but Medina Ryan and Ms. Watson had a lot of input tonight that was very helpful. Interesting his input as well. I appreciate the public showing up and participating.
All right, anything else on how we do? Yeah. All right, then I am adjourning this meeting. Oh my God, this is so record.
I'm in shock. It's not even.
Just carry it forward.
Yeah, kids, that's good money. You got right more than I have.